What's up, world? It's your boy AJ the Black World Traveler, and today I am talking about all black people are not from Africa. All dark-skinned people are not from Africa, and all Africans are not black. And the reason why I'm doing this video because people are saying that all humans came from Africa, but Africa wasn't even named Africa till like years later. It was in Kebulon, was the original scientific name for Africa. But Asia also had black people. And when I went to Asia the first time, in 1990 when I went to Asia, when I went to the Philippines, that was the first time I seen black Asians. I didn't even know nothing about the Negritos at the time. But they're black Asians. Same as in the Melanesian Islands, they're Asian as well. A lot of the people came from Papua New Guinea and South Sea Island, all these places. They came from Asia. They did not come from Africa. Some Africans did come through, but in that region, a lot of the people in that region were from Asia and traveled through Asia to Australia and all the surrounding islands in the Straits. When you have when you see in Africa, North Africans are not black. Some are, but a lot of them aren't. And that's the reason in America, we're really ignorant when it comes to Africa because we think that all African people are dark. I'm gonna show you this. So Morocco is the northern part of Africa. That's a northern country. That's where majority of your they're fair skinned. They're more like, they're still melanin people, but they're not dark skinned. They're in Africa, and they're in North Africa, which North Africa is across from Europe. So when you're in that region, Europe is right across the water from Africa. Right across the water from Africa. You have Italy, Portugal, Spain. It's right across the water. Now, when you come down from Morocco, you go down further, you have Egypt on the left side. You have Saudi Arabia on the right side. You have basically, so what you do, you pass, once you come out, you go to the bottom of Europe, right by the Red Sea, that's where Greece is. There was a canal in the 1800s, there was a canal built where ships could start going through. And so ships started going through that way, through the Red Sea, through the Mediterranean Sea, because now there's a, but when the British put their prisoners on ships and told them to leave and told them don't come back, they had to come from the top of Europe. From the top of Europe, then they had to come around by Morocco. They had to go through the Atlantic Ocean, go to the bottom of Africa, which is by the Cape of Hope, which is by South Africa, and then come around and then come back on East Africa. East Africa is in the Indian Ocean, where West Africa is in the Atlantic. And they had to go around the continent of Africa. And the reason why I know that was a route they took, even when they took slaves, it didn't make any sense. Why would they take slaves? I never understood the slave trade. It never makes sense to me. Why would they would take people from that part of the world and take them all the way to the Americas, which is far away, because they had to come around the Cape, but they were saying that they came across the Atlantic. And I don't know if me being a sailor, I know with those kind of ships they had back then, those ships weren't made to take that kind of abuse and torture. They couldn't take that route because when the Asians came to the Americas, the Asians didn't go across the Atlantic. The Asians came through the Pacific, and if they were from the Indian Ocean, they still came through the Pacific, and they came around and followed the land. That's how a lot of the Eskimos end up being in Alaska, because they followed the land because it was coastal, it was safer. If they went across from, say, just across the water, it's too dangerous. I've been on those waters, man. Being in the Navy for 4 years and being at sea, I know how it can get, especially when there's no land around. The water's a lot more rougher. When the storms come, you're sick the whole time. And that's the reason why I know that they didn't bring slaves over like that, because you would not survive going across that kind of water and that kind of terrain. So if they came over the Atlantic or the Pacific, it is so hard to survive on that water like that, when the tides are strong like that. And they describe that these people were tied or chained down to the floor where they couldn't go to the restroom. They couldn't urinate. They had to basically defecate and urinate on themselves. There would be so much bacteria and infections on their skin. You know, they would get so sick they wouldn't survive. So yeah, I'll never believe that, and I'll stand on that. And I'm not going to debate nobody about that, because it doesn't make any sense. The way they describe the slave trade, how they brought people over, never made no sense. You know, in my last video, I basically was showing how when I was in Australia and I started learning the history in Australia, not only did I learn the history in Australia, I learned the history of the Torres Strait Islanders. I learned the history of the Fijians. I learned the history of the Maoris in New Zealand, the Samoans, the Tongans. I started learning the history of them. See, every person that came over to these countries, these islands, they weren't all just one tribe. They were from different places. Most of the world was dark skinned back then. So yeah, everybody in that region would come into the dark complected countries. People were already over here, man. When you go to any parts of the Americas, you're going to see the indigenous people. They're dark skinned people. They're not light people. I was just in Panama. The Indians are dark. I mean, in North America, a lot of Indians are dark. I mean, in Arizona, when they live in a higher, you know, you see more of them in the higher elevations. They have a little more lighter skin because they're in the colder climates. But when you see a lot of the natives, like in California, the ones especially the ones in the South, they're dark, man. You know, and a lot of them, we interbreed with them. Like, all black people did not come from Africa. So a lot of the blacks that did come over here, they all came from different places. They all came over from different places. Now it's crazy because when you go down to South and Central America and you see black people, we look exactly the same. It ain't no difference. I mean, some, you know, the ones that did come from Africa that came down there, a lot of them did embrace the African culture. But they're not trying to go back to Africa. They're trying to come to the Americas to work, or they're trying to go to the UK or somewhere, because financially there's no benefit of them going to Africa. And people that are going to Africa, a lot of people are getting DNA, finding out that they have certain tribes in African tribes in their blood, which, I mean, I don't want to knock nobody's, you know, crush nobody's parade, but if you believe that, and yeah, you believe that. But I know majority black Americans in America, people don't know that a lot of us, our ancestors told us who we were. A lot of our elders told us who we were. Like, you know, in 1800s, like, your great-grandmother, your great-great-grandmother, everybody told the last generation who we were. A lot of them weren't talking about no slave ships. A lot of us didn't come on slave ships. A lot of us got slaves on the land. And a lot of us were not slaves here. That's another thing that gets me. When you speak of Africa, of black people in general, it's always slaves. And then they were servants. You know, the thing about it, they were servants. If they were anything, they were servants. The word slave is a word that everybody runs on, but slave was the name that was given to the Slavic people. The Slavic indigenous servants were called slaves. Slavic, they came from the word Slavic. And that's who they were. But they used the new term slave is just, the whole world used the term except indigenous servants. Indigenous servants worked in the fields. They did the same thing that everybody else did. For instance, in Australia, in the 1900s, there were indigenous servants that came in from Sicily to work in the sugarcane fields in Australia with the Aboriginals. Now, the Sicilians were working. Think about it, they came from Sicily. They were working in the fields with the Aborigines. They were promised 40 acres. The people were working and working and working and working. They weren't getting what they asked for. So the Sicilians hired 2 attorneys from Sicily, and they sued the Australian government, and they won the case. And so the Sicilians own a lot of the sugarcane plantations in Australia right now. They own it. They own some of the plantation because they were promised that and they didn't get it. But they were supposed to get paid a certain way. I don't know why y'all think that they were just out here just working for free and wasn't giving nothing. And when they were working for free, they rebelled because they were promised. You know, slaves were promised stuff, but they were promising them to give them, basically give their land back, because a lot of black people here were already on this land. You know, the Native American man, the black man, we were the same people. We intermixed with each other, so we were the same people. We were both here. We just intermixed with each other. We went through the same thing. You know, that's the reason why some of the natives were darker, because we were interbreeding with them. But we both were here on the land together. And that's why they enslaved. And you know, you might believe it. The Native American and the black men were both classified as Negroes or colored. We were classified under the same classification. When J.C. Jackson, I don't know how the hell he did that, but when they started calling black, dark-skinned people African American, which makes no sense because Africa is a continent and America is a continent. Nobody African calls himself an African. They call themselves a Ghanaian African or a Zimbabwe African, or they just call themselves, I'm Nigerian, or I'm Igbo, you know, or I'm Nigerian and I'm Yoruba, or they'll be like, I'm South African, I'm Zulu. They don't be like, I'm African, I'm South African. So see how that's a difference? See the difference of being an African American and being an American. An African American is a person who basically came here from Africa, migrated here, and changed themselves to an African, because Africans were their origins from, and an American who they're becoming now. But even if they're Nigerian or whatever, they're not going to say Nigerian American. I mean, Africa is a continent. I don't know why they use that term. It's really not a wise term to use, calling yourself an African and an American. It just doesn't make any sense, because Africa has 54 countries and it's a whole continent. I mean, North America is a continent, but we're not the only North Americans. You got to realize, Canada are North Americans too. Canada has more land. It's bigger. It's a bigger landmass. Between Canada and the Greenlands, the landmass is bigger. The population is smaller, but the landmass is bigger. You know, we're right between. North America is right between Canada and South America and Central America. We're right in the middle. We just have a bigger population because there's a lot more people living here. But we have the less landmass. And a lot of blacks, and the thing about Africans, a lot of Africans don't realize that we have subcultures here, that we have our own cultures here. Africans just think we just, you know, they don't know that we have indigenous blood. They don't know that we're indigenous people here. A lot of them don't know that. Some know it. And if a lot of them know it, they won't say it because they don't want to offend nobody. But no, man, our elders told us who we were. All these black people going out here taking these DNA tests, saying they from all these tribes, and they linking them to like 4 or 5 tribes. Africans don't even breed like that. Africans, they breed within their within their villages. That's why a lot of times they be related, because they'll date their cousin or their distant cousin. All the tribes did that back in the days. Even today, a lot of the tribes date within their tribes or the people they know of, the same culture. You know, if you're Bantu, usually Bantu marry Bantu, or Zulu marry Zulu. Usually they date within their culture. Most Nigerians date other Nigerians because they understand each other. See, Nigerian women and Nigerian men, even no matter what tribe they're from, they're very rich cultures, so they're very, very strict on dating outside. I mean, a lot of the women would date like white guys or something, but you know, some of the guys, you know, they come like the UK, they'll date a white girl or whatever. And a lot of times, you know, if that person is not of that culture, they got to be willing to be all in, because those are traditions that they don't break. See, when you marry outside of in America, we did outside our race, we just did outside our race. That's how we look at it. You know, but a lot of us don't embrace, we don't even talk about, like in these modern times, you don't hear too many black people talking about the Native American ancestry, you know, the indigenous, us being indigenous. You don't hear nobody talk about it really. They're talking about, oh yeah, I took my DNA test and I'm Africa. I'm going to Africa to the motherland. That's what happens, you know. Now, the reason why a lot of blacks have problems when they move to Africa, you got African people that actually are taking is just basically saying, you know what, I found out that they get a DNA get the false reading that they're some kind of African tribe. They pack their bags and move to Africa, and then they realize it's different. Yeah, it's different. You're not African. You don't know how it is to be African. Even if you're genetically African in your blood, you still won't know how to be African. And see, a lot of people, we can't take that. We don't like to, we like to get our money. We have opportunities here. In America, we have a lot of opportunities here. So to go to a place where there's not too many opportunities, you got to kind of create your way. The African governments in certain countries, they can just take your land from you. We're beefing over territory, like in the streets, or a certain fraternity or churches, might have different views of other churches or what they're practicing in religion. We have those kind of problems. We don't have problems like you have over there, because our tribes that are still indigenous, a lot of the young people don't even know about them unless you're raised in certain cities. Like if you're raised in California and like New York, a lot of times we got detached from our tribes, especially us being from the South, our family, through the Trail of Tears, a lot of blacks got displaced off the reservations and we were told to leave. So we had to go to other parts like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. We had to go to them places and start our lives over. Even some Native Americans. I mean, people talk about how some Native Americans, had blacks as slaves. There was blacks that had people as slaves too. Well, I call them just servants, they were slaves. They were natives that even took their people in and made them servants. Same as in the black community, there were some blacks that had other blacks as servants. They paid them. They weren't just having working for free. They were people that came from slavery that worked on the cotton fields, that were taught how to run the gins, and then when they became freed, they were given a lot of blacks that was given. If they were given their 40 acres of mule, they were given tools. They were given ways to make money. So that's the reason why blacks were able to thrive, because a lot of them worked for the Europeans and they would give them, I know families that got their 40 acres and a mule. I know people that got them. Several ones. I know black people from America that were never enslaved. A lot of us were not enslaved. Some of us might have been enslaved, but a lot of us weren't. I hate that word slave, but a lot of us were servants, and we did work for, we served. Servants are people who went out there and served, like in the plantation. To come out of out of the fields. Yeah, when you were given what you were promised, you were able to thrive. So the blacks that were given the plantation land, or cause sometimes the slave owner would die, they would actually give the land to the slaves, because some of them did honor them. Some of them did honor. Some did give the blacks what they promised them. That's why they were working hard. They weren't just working for nothing. Black people were really out there working because they were working for the common goal, for the 40 acres and a mule. That's why the revolts were crazy when they didn't get them. They would get violent because you promised me, this land and you don't give it to me, and I've been working for you all these years. Yeah, he's gonna take it to another level, and he's gonna make himself known. So they would give the people what they promised them. You gotta think about it, man. Slave masters were always outnumbered. There were a lot more people when they were on these plantations. A lot of them were more, it was a lot more people out there that were servants than there were, owners. So when slavery was abolished and everything, a lot of black people had things to fall back on. We were able to build ourselves up. The crazy thing is that, from the time when a lot of us got displaced off the reservations, that's when a lot of and then the education thing kicked in, when they were trying to take the natives and whitewash them and basically make them not speak their native language no more and start, doing what they wanted them to do. This is what happens. They start putting them in boarding schools. They made them speak English, because a lot of us were not, let's be real, when the Europeans came here, we weren't speaking English. We learned English because we had to learn it, because they wouldn't teach it to us. We had to learn it. They took a lot of the native kids when they got, you're a fair-skinned child compared to a dark-skinned child. A lot of the dark-skinned Indians, people weren't interested in having the dark-skinned Indians. That's mostly of the country. Most of the time, you're in Central and South America and the Caribbean, the darker Native American kids were like they didn't really want to deal with them. They wanted the lighter skin. Same thing happened in Australia. In the stolen generation, man, if you were considered what they call a half caste was a black kid who basically had a white mother, a white father. And what they would do, they call them a half caste. And then they were the ones that they would take in and they were put in the boarding schools, you know. They were inside because they were fair skinned. They probably had, you know, some kind of, the slave master would have a child by their mother, which a lot of times that happened back in the days. Another reason why you had revolts. People just wasn't fighting for nothing. Yeah, the black men were fighting back. You got my wife pregnant. Hell yeah, I'm gonna come at you and do something at you. They always they always had us walking around looking like we were scared of them. Nah, bro, that was never the case. This is what they want you to see. Is every time that's why with the movies, when they started putting us in, making these slave movies, what I hate watching, they always show us, yes, sir, boss. Yes, sir. We always scary, running from the Klan, and you know, every time the white man says something, we run it. We were not made like that, bro. Black and Native people were made like that. Black and Natives, we all intermixed, so we both had that warrior spirit in us. You're gonna have to kill us. You're going to kill us, and we're going to kill you. You can just run over us like that. So giving us that kind of image was a way to control us so we wouldn't revolt. That's the reason why I think about it. To this day, if you see 4 or 5 or 6 young black men together in the parking lot, the police show up because people call the police because people are afraid of us. They were afraid of us then, they're afraid of us now. A lot of it's out of guilt, you know, and but then look at the regions. Look at these different regions, man. Like, look at the region up here in North America, South America, Central America. You go to any of these places, these people are all dark, man. These people are dark, just like you. So the Native American people and the black people were the same people. We were on the land together. We blended together. So a lot of us blended with them. So we became one. Let's just be real, man. Call it what it is. So, and you got to realize everybody didn't come the same route. That's what I'm saying. You don't know if you came as an African, you came as an Asian, you could have came from Australia. Because look at the difference of the Aboriginal and the Puerto Rican. Look at the similarities. And these scientists even they did because they could look at your cranium. You can find out where a person's from by their cranium shape. You know, by their bones. The cranium was the one thing that gave all who you were and where you were from. And the scientists they found a skull in Brazil, and it matched the skull of an Aboriginal Australian. And when you see a lot of Puerto Ricans, they look Aboriginal, same as Aboriginals look Puerto Rican. Some Aboriginals look Native American. Some Aboriginals look Black American. You'll be shocked, man. And I can show you, these are people that I've come across that I can show you. And it's amazing, man, how it's not promoted like that, but it's true, you know? And so, yeah, man. So all black people are not from Africa. All dark-skinned people are not African, and all Africans are not black. It's your boy, AJ's Black World Traveler, and I am out.